Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spinning Back Clique, the show that takes you on a quick spin through the week's news. And on this week's show, we're talking title fights, both at heavyweight and lightweight. We're talking weigh-in issues, and we're looking at the return of crowds to UFC pay-per-view events. But first, guys, let's kick things off with what's coming down the pipe this weekend. UFC 260 sees Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou face off in a titanic rematch for the UFC heavyweight title. It is a huge fight. But put yourself in Jon Jones' shoes, guys. Who do you want to see win the fight? What do you want to hear from Bruce Buffer at the end of that title fight? And you or and still? We'll do 3 minutes on the clock to get things started. And Goes, you can lead away.
I'll be honest with you guys. I think if I'm Jon Jones, I want to hear it's a draw. I think heavyweight's going to be tough for him. But if I got to pick one, I'm going to say and still. Because here's the thing. If he's going up to heavyweight, the one thing that you got to admit he's going to give up is power. And Francis Ngannou's power scares heavyweights. So I can't imagine what it's going to feel like for a guy going up in weight to feel power like that. At least with Stipe Miocic, he'll have time to breathe in that fight. Stipe doesn't really put that much pressure. He can get comfortable, formulate a plan, make adjustments. With Francis Ngannou, it's going to be like a raging bull just coming at him from the very beginning, from the get-go. It's not going to give him time to breathe. I think it's going to overwhelm him at heavyweight. So there's not going to be much time to solve any puzzles there for Jon Jones. The best case for him, I think, is Stipe Miocic. I think they can formulate a game plan in that type of scenario. Stay away from Francis Ngannou. You want to hear and still.
I say and still as well, for a bit of a different reason. The simple reason that Jon Jones is moving up to heavyweight for legacy, and Stipe Miocic is the greatest heavyweight of all time. And of course, if he beats Ngannou, he adds on to that. So in terms of legacy for Jon Jones, you want to fight a guy like Stipe Miocic because that's the guy to beat at heavyweight. Now, of course, you're talking about legacy versus kind of like the entertainment factor for the fans. I know the idea of Ngannou chasing Jon Jones for 25 minutes is going to be super entertaining because of his knockout power, of course. But I think if you're Jon Jones and you want to add on to your legacy, you want to fight Stipe Miocic. He is the greatest heavyweight of all time. And that's the perfect name you want to add on to an already incredible resume. How about you, Danny?
I agree with all you guys' points. I think from our standpoint, I think it all makes sense. Obviously, and still, we're talking about legacy. We're talking about a guy that's been up top for a very long time, and a big over Stipe, as you mentioned, Farah. The best UFC heavyweight of all time. I think that'll certainly put something new in the GOAT argument for Jon Jones, and I think he'd be undeniable then. But we also got to look at a few months back. Jon Jones has been calling out Stipe, but really the fight that almost came to fruition, the closest he's been to fight to heavyweight has been against Francis Ngannou. Let's not forget about summer of last year. He was campaigning for a fight with Ngannou, and that fight never materialized. Both guys wanted the fight, but unfortunately, it just never came to fruition. I do have the feeling that they studied. There's a reason why they called out Francis Ngannou. There's a reason why they want to fight him. I don't know exactly all the technical aspects, but we know that Jon Jones has a very, very smart team behind him, and I feel like they see some holes in Francis Ngannou's game that they can exploit, that they maybe can't exploit against Stipe, who's obviously, probably by most opinions, a more skilled and more well-rounded fighter. So I agree with you guys, but I think really deep down, Jon Jones wants the Francis Ngannou bout.
Whichever way it comes, it's going to be an absolutely huge fight. Two huge fights in the UFC heavyweight division. Let's move down a few weight classes, guys. Things are finally starting to map out at 155 pounds. Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler will face off for the vacant UFC lightweight title at UFC 262 on May the 15th, after it was officially confirmed that Khabib has indeed retired and Dana has finally decided that he's cool with it. Now, what's going to happen in that title fight? First off, give us your reaction to that booking. Is that the title fight you would have booked? And who do you think is going to be the man to take over Khabib's mantle at 155 pounds? It is all change at lightweight. Give us your take, guys. Farah, you can lead us off.
I would have had Dustin Poirier as one half of that for sure, but I think Dustin kind of made it clear. He alluded to the fact that he was interested in a trilogy bout with Conor McGregor. It was unlikely that they were going to make that a title fight. At least I didn't think so. So, I mean, Dustin deserves to go after that big money fight for him. So I'm not entirely surprised, although I would have had him as one half of the title fight. That being said, Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler is a great fight. I think Michael Chandler is a underdog. The opening odds have him as an underdog, if I'm not mistaken. I'd say if you're an odds maker, I like that money on Michael Chandler for the simple reason, experience. He's gone 5 rounds on numerous occasions in his career. He's also shown that he can finish the fight quick in the first round. He's done that multiple times, especially recently in his career. Oliveira is very, very dangerous. But I think in terms of cardio, pace, and that experience, championship experience that Michael Chandler has, I like this fight for him. But at the same time, like I said, Charles Oliveira is very, very dangerous with jiu-jitsu, showing us his striking as well. So it's just a great stylistic matchup. But I think the experience that Chandler has is really going to play a factor. How about you, Danny?
Yeah, the beautiful thing about the UFC lightweight division, at least at the very top, you can't go wrong with any matchups. You can literally just throw them all in a bag and pick out names, and any fight's going to be amazing. So I can't possibly hate on this fight. This fight's great just as a fight alone. But as far as, what's at stake, obviously, they're taking the UFC lightweight title here. Not only that, but Khabib's title. I mean, this is a big deal. I thought Dustin Poirier for sure would be in that equation. My opinion, it should have been Poirier versus Oliveira. I think those are the 2 top guys right now. Those are the guys that should have fought. Those are the guys that have a bunch of fights logged in the UFC. They're on really good win streaks. That to me was the move. Maybe make Michael Chandler and Justin Gaethje. I don't know. So I do think the UFC dropped the ball in making that bout. But look, at the end of the day, as I said, any matchup is good at 155 pounds. And we know that Dustin Poirier did want to fight Conor McGregor, the trilogy. So I can't hate on it. But this one's a tough one. Just to contradict Fair, I'm going to go with Mr. Charles Oliveira here. Mr. Charles Olives. I think he'll get it done. What do you think, Goes?
Well, I thought it was really surprising. You're right. I think Dustin Poirier should have been part of that equation. And I put a little blame on him just because it's something that he's always said he wanted to do. And he had that opportunity, passed it up. And I understand why he passed it up. And I think the other half of that blame needs to go to the UFC, because the UFC should have made it worth his while. It's just not a good look for guys to skip out on the belt for other fights. The belt should be always the thing that you want to go after. So Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler is what you're left over with, and it's still a great fight. And I agree. I'm going to be the tiebreaker here, guys. I think it's going to go to Michael Chandler. He has that experience in title fights. He knows what it's like to lose it and come back and win it again. He's been through a lot in his career. He's proven a lot. He needs to prove a lot to a lot of people, and this is his make or break moment. I think he has to get a win here, so I got him winning this one.
Mike versus Charlie Olives is going to be an absolute banger. Now, let's change the tone just a little bit. Scary scenes, guys, at the UFC on ESPN 21 weigh-ins on Friday. Julia Stoliarenko passed out on the scale. Very, very worrying scenes to watch live. Watching the recap, obviously it's not what you want to see in the sport. It's incredibly worrying to see, but we still haven't found an answer to this yet. We've solved a lot of problems in the sport of MMA, or the UFC, or the authorities have solved so many problems in the sport of MMA to bring it up to the modern day, but the weigh-ins is still a big issue. So guys, my simple question is this: what should be done in order to prevent instances like the one we saw on Friday, or even worse, occurring in the future? We'll do 3 minutes on the clock. And Danny, you can go first.
Yeah, this was such a tough one. I mean, the UFC has done certain things. Let's remember a few years back, the weigh-ins used to take place. Actually, they used to be also the ceremonial weigh-ins, and in the middle of the day or sometimes late afternoon. Now they switched it to morning weigh-ins, and since we saw an overwhelming response from the fighters soon after the change, saying how much better it was, how much better they felt just waking up and having to weigh in and not having to wait all day. And there's been things that have been done. Also, the UFC has added, especially in the women's sides, right, more weight classes. 125 pounds did not used to be there. We had girls that were, kind of in the middle, that were flyweights and were draining, like Jojo Calder, were like draining themselves all the way to 115. So there has been some things done, but I really think it's part of the culture, and it comes down to the fighter. I think even if you add more weight classes, people are just going to look to, oh, well, I might not make 155, but maybe 165. I think it's just part of the culture that it's an unfortunate thing here in mixed martial arts. And, I think it's the fighter responsibility as well as the coach. And I think we need to normalize, like, hey, let's do catch weights. Like, I can't make the weight. I'm not healthy. Let's do catch weights. I'm not going to cut a certain amount of weight to compromise myself and my health. So I think it's part of the culture, and I think we need to change that and make catch weights more acceptable. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I agree here with Danny. I mean, I don't think a whole lot can be done here. You have to give the UFC their props because they have made their adjustments throughout the course of all this. But aside from completely revamping the system, fighters are always going to find a way to push the limits. It doesn't matter how many weight classes you add, they will always find a way to push the limits. So Dana White has really seemed like he doesn't want to add very many more weight classes. I think he's done all he can for women so far in the up to this point. So I don't think that's the answer. I think the only thing you can maybe do is have the doctors take a look at them right before. I mean, you see them back in the curtain. There's a lot of time back there. And a lot of fighters have said, I've watched other fighters pass out before they even get to that point. So maybe somebody should check them out before they even get to that. But the good thing at the end of the day is they're not allowed to compete in that state. What do you think, Farah?
Oh, I agree with the both of you for sure. Because, like you said, goes if you do add more weight classes, I think fighters are still going to try to push the limit and try to get that advantage of weighing in more after the weigh-ins and stuff like that. So I don't think that entirely solves the problem. I do think the responsibility falls not only on the fighter, but the people around them, nutritionists, coaches, stuff like that. You got to check the fighters out beforehand, before the weigh-ins, see their state, see how they're doing. And as well, like Danny said, catch weights need to be a little bit more acceptable. I know they're very frowned upon. They're looked at, and I know there's like 30%, 20% of your purse that gets taken if you do miss weight, but also agreeing on catch weights, especially if the stakes of the fight aren't that high. If we're not talking about title fights or number one contender fights, I think catch weights need to be a lot more acceptable, because at the end of the day, we do want fighters competing healthily, and we saw what happened with Julia. I mean, her having to weigh in a second time, I didn't quite understand why that was the case. I think it was clear from the first time that she was in no state to compete, even though she did make the weight. So I think it falls a lot as well on the fighters and the people around them, because fighters are always going to want to push. So you need the people around you to kind of stop you and do what's best for your health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And finally, guys, the UFC has confirmed that UFC 261 in Jacksonville and UFC 262 in Houston will both play to maximum capacity crowds. It is a big statement from the UFC, with Dana White making good on his promise to be the first sport back in front of capacity crowds. But what were your feelings on this when you first heard that this was actually going to happen? Is being the first sport back a good thing, or would the UFC maybe have been better off just hanging back a little bit and waiting? We'll do 3 minutes on the clock to finish off, and Goes, you can lead off.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing, but it's only a good thing when you don't have to rush it. And I feel like maybe we're rushing a little bit to get back to this, maybe to even fulfill that promise. And that doesn't make too much sense to me. This is a sport that really, when you think about it, guys, we've come a long way. We've done a lot, but we still don't really get the respect from some of the bigger sports out there, the footballs, the basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, all those guys, those big platforms still kind of look down on us a little bit. And I think Dana White, when he was able to put things together, this was the first time where the other sports kind of followed MMA's lead. And I think he took a lot of pride in that. And he wants to build off of that and take that next step and bring back crowds. And I understand why he's trying to do that, but we have experts out there for a reason. And they're saying we should probably wait. And it looks like we're getting close to turning a corner here. So I don't even think they would have had to wait that long. But I do feel like this is a little rushed. What do you think, Farah?
Yeah, I know. I liked what they were doing with Abu Dhabi, kind of taking it as like not a full capacity crowd. I know a lot of the fighters were frustrated about the quarantine and not being able to get out and stuff. But you know what? It kept all the fights intact. I mean, that's the thing that you want to ask. That's the question you want to ask. Do you want to risk, if you're the fighter, do you want to risk your fight falling through? We saw what happened with Volkanovski and Brian Ortega. And the idea of having a full capacity crowd when we're still having a lot of people test positive for COVID. And of course, it's not like the situation is entirely tamed. I understand it from a business standpoint, but at the same time, if you're talking about putting these mega cards and if you want them to be intact, you're kind of risking that. So I like what they were doing with Abu Dhabi, like a 20% kind of capacity crowd, easing their way into it. But this just seems like a massive leap from that. Again, I understand it from a business standpoint, but it just seems like if you want to keep those big fights intact, maybe that's not the best idea, at least not right now. I think they should have waited a little bit. How about you, Danny?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, It's a tough one, right? I was just covering the Canelo fight against Yildirim here in Florida, in Miami, and they had 15,000 fans, but in a 70,000 seat arena. So they were all spread out, and it felt very safe. I didn't get COVID from it. It felt like a good experience, but 15,000 at capacity in a small arena in Jacksonville, I don't necessarily think that's the best option here. I know that the vaccines here in Florida are rolling out fairly quick. So we got a month more. So maybe, that's certainly good news. But I do think that we're rushing here. I think it's better at capacity, at a certain capacity. I don't think to max it out is the way to go. As Farah mentioned, all the UFC Vegas fights, we constantly have fights falling out all the time. I can't imagine doing it in Florida where COVID is a bit crazy here, and also at capacity. So it's very weird, but I get it. I get the fighters wanting to have fans back in. I get the UFC wanting to have a gate, but we're almost at the end. Just hang on, and like Go said, I don't think it's too long. Maybe 6 more months, and I think we're able to see something like this. But yeah, I think we're rushing a bit here. But we'll see. We'll see how it all unfolds on April.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've done an incredible job of holding events during the pandemic. I think they've got the ability to hold those events relatively securely and safely. If ever there was a sport where they could maybe hold things back just a little bit and wait and see how things develop, maybe MMA was the sport to do that. But they're looking to get back quick, and I know the fans will be delighted to see events played out with crowds in the stands. That is all we have time for on the show this week. It is a big week at MMA Junkies. We bring you all of the pre-fight build-up ahead of UFC 260, then take you through all our regular fight night coverage and beyond as we unpack each and every fight on the card as per usual. Enjoy the fights this weekend, guys, and we'll be back next week for a little bit more from Spinning Back Clique.